Hi, I'm Darlene Williams, and this is
Javen Williams.
Welcome to Living Every Day with God. Our topic today is a country built on freedom of choice. We're going to run this a little differently today. This is why I have my son Javen with us. So we're mixing God and politics together, and we hope you enjoy this. Why do you think God gave us free will? Freedom to choose whether it is right or wrong. When God created humankind, He gave us a free will so that we can make our own choices. Even when we fell and we listened to Satan, it was our choice. Just like it's our choice when we accept salvation through Jesus Christ. It's our choice. We get to choose whether we choose it right or wrong. As you see the parallel, the difference between when we fell and when we accept Jesus Christ. Both of them are a choice, and we have the free will to choose. And God allows us to do this. Each person has a free will, and God respects each person's free will within His laws. Having free will does not mean that we get to do whatever we want to do without consequences. There are consequences that we suffer by the choices that we make. We are responsible for the choices that we make, each and every one of us, whether it is good or bad. But it's still, we have a free will to choose. Just as God respects our free will, we also must respect others' free will. We should not dominate or impose our ways on other people. Neither should we attempt to turn them into copies of ourselves. Instead, we should be examples to them. We should love them. We should pray for them. We should teach them, not take away their God-given right of freedom to choose in this country. And I want to give you some examples in the Bible of choices. In Joshua chapter 24, verse 15, the NIV version, it goes, as Joshua is saying, "But if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourself this day whom you will serve, whether the gods of your ancestors served beyond the Euphrates, or the gods of the Amorites, in whom you are living. But as for me and my household, I will serve the Lord." Choice. Proverbs chapter 16, verse 9, the New King James Version, it says, "A man's heart plans his ways, but the Lord directs his steps." Choice. In John 16, chapter 7, verse 17, the NIV version, it goes, "Anyone who chooses to do the will of God will find out whether my teaching comes from God or whether I speak on my own." Choice. In Mark chapter 8, verse 34, NIV version, this is Jesus talking. "Then he called the crowd to him along with his disciples and said, 'Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me.'" Jesus gives us a choice. Jesus also says in Revelation chapter 3, verse 20, the NIV version, he says, "Here I am, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in and eat with them, with that person, and they with me." Jesus gives us a choice. We can either open the door and invite him into our lives, or we can continue to keep the door shut. But it is our choice. Choice after choice after choice. God gives us that free will to choose.
Now, I'd like to discuss, before we can do anything on that concept, just what the meaning of freedom actually means in the context of government and a people. And by the Cambridge Dictionary, the definition of freedom is the condition or right to be able or allowed to do whatever you want to without being controlled or limited. Now, the thing about freedom and the meaning in itself is that that can be interpreted a multitude of different ways. And honestly, that's the beauty of it. That even though different countries and different types of societies all can be different, all can fall under the word of free and freedom. Just to use United States as a basis, as a one way of looking at freedom, we can see in our allies that they can vary and have different versions of it. Like Great Britain, for example, they have a parliament, which is similar to our government, where it's two houses and parties, but they still have a monarch, which really doesn't have power, but still a figurehead. But that's not the same as us, and it'd be hard to find anyone there who doesn't believe that they're not a free nation. Now, on top of that, other places in Europe, you can go to Scandinavian countries or maybe the Netherlands, and they have a more democratic social view towards more socialism than to maybe what we consider as a democracy, but they're completely free and they feel they're free too. All three of these nations and a multitude of other ones are all free, but use freedom in their own way. It's kind of like beauty. When they say beauty's in the eye of the beholder, well, freedom is the same thing. It's up to interpretation. And that's honestly kind of the whole thing. But the thing about it is, what reasons why their freedoms are so somewhat different than each other is the fact of the matter is everyone's long-standing history. And a lot of European nations like Great Britain or any of the other ones in Europe have a history of kings and queens and kingdoms that expand for centuries on end. Now, for our episode, we're talking about a country built on freedom of choice. And there's many of that, especially many in our hemisphere, in the north and south of America. But luckily we don't need to go any farther than right here. Because when it comes to freedom of choice, or the modern version of it, a country to start from that point, it all starts with us. Now, just to understand backwards of how we get this title, or maybe we live by this ideal, which many more took after us, which would later go from our American Revolution to the French Revolution to many more in the islands, and coming from their empires and establishing their own right in their own country. Now, just to go back to how everything came to be, and just a little background, America, the whole point of the New World was a dream of freedom. Yes, a lot of people came here for adventure, and a lot of people came to experience something new, but a lot came here to escape religious and political persecution. And for all of them, they all came here to escape the old set of ways in the past that dictated how you're supposed to live your life and where you're supposed to end your life, just by where you were born and what you were born into. This world and this area, especially America, South America, this this whole land is an idea of freedom in itself. Now, and for a while, it was like that. It was everything they ever hoped for. Yes, it was hard. Yes, it was pain, but the hope was there, and the fact of the matter that what they put into it is what they got out of it made it all worth the while and worth the struggle. But that all kind of changed when King George III in Britain, after seeing, things are starting to work out, and technically you're our colony, so you gotta listen to us and do what we say you're gonna do, even though we let you have all this freedom for all this set period of time. That started in 1765 with the Stamp Act, and that basically is just a tax on stamps. It's not really anything to get too into it, but what happens in the time period that happens after it is, over the next decade, Britain and King George basically imposed more forcefulness onto the colonies to basically put them back into their reigns. 5 years after that said time of the Stamp Act is when the Boston Massacre happened, where the soldiers basically ended up killing American colonists. Now, after that, 3 years later, the Tea Act, another act which led another bill on tea that taxed it, which led to the Boston Tea Party. At this point, both of them were at their wits' end. King George III basically revoked the Charter of Massachusetts after the Tea Party, and then closed the port as a punishment for insurrection. At this point, the colonists were fed up, and they were completely over it, but they just wanted representation. Over the next year after that, in 1775, because in 1774, that's when the first Continental Congress was created in Philadelphia. After that, with the battles and basically King George renouncing their colonization to Great Britain, they realized that that was not enough. That they were never going to get the representation that they wanted from Great Britain. And the only way they were going to be able to represent themselves is to become something new. Something that really has not been done many times before. So, what happens to a people, a group, a state, a colony, a country, when their freedom of choice is denied? That brings us to the Declaration of Independence, because in short answer, in some way or some form, it always leads to rebellion. Figuratively and literally, depending what the situation needs. Now, I like to read some of the Declaration of Independence, mostly just the beginning and the end, because it's an extensively long document. But I suggest everybody read it for their own to really understand what this country and what the hopes and dreams of this country from day one was supposed to be and is supposed to be. So, when in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold that these truths be self-evident, that all men are created equal. They are empowered by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That when any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter it or abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not change for light and transient cause, and accordingly all experience has to. That mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuse and usurpations, pursuing invariable to the subject, to the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government, to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient suffrage of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which contains them to alter their former system of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeat injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. Here's just a few. He has refused to pass other laws for accommodations of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish the right to representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with mainly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people.
Wow.
He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states for the purpose of obstructing the laws of naturalization of foreigners.
This sounds like what's happening
Yeah.
now.
Yup. Refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither and raise the conditions of new appropriations of lands. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assets to laws for establishing judiciary powers.
Whoa, that is exactly what's happening currently in our
And it honestly
in our
continues
government.
where if it seems like it's coming kind of similar, you kind of gotta worry a little bit. But it continues to go on with this, and it's a long extensive because it entails the full deeds that United States are bringing to the world against the king. But because it goes into things.
So this was something that happened.
Yeah.
Was happening back then that they wanted to prevent from happening in the future. So the same thing that was happening back then, we're like repeating ourselves.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. And to finish it, it just ends on, after it goes into all the different problems he did wrong, it goes, in every stage of these operations, we have pension for redress. In the most humble terms, our repeat pensions have been answered only by repeat injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be ruler of a free people.
Whoa.
Nor have we been wanting in attention to our British brethren. We have warned them for time to time of attempts of their legislation to extend an unwarranted jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our immigration and settled here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjoined with them by the ties of our common kindred to disobey these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They, too, have been deaf to our voice of justice and constancy. We must, therefore, acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation and hold them, as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace, friends. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America in General Congress assemble, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intention, do in the name and by authority of the good people of these colonies solemnly publish and declare that these United States are and of right ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all alliances to the British Crown, and that all political connections between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states, they are they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may have the right to do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection and divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, our sacred honor.
Wow. So this is something that they foresaw what was happening back then. This is why they wanted to be free. And yet our current government is trying to go back to what they wanted to get out of.
Yes. See,
whoa. And because really, if we really pay attention to what's happening in our government, our rights are slowly being taken away. And a lot of people are not aware of this.
Yeah, that is true.
Because the government and policies have been rolled back. Is that what?
Yes.
And so our rights are being stripped. But this is why they wrote the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah, see, well, the author of the Declaration of Independence is our third president, back when he was not when we were just not a country, was Thomas Jefferson. And yes, at the time, he was kind of looked more on as an extremist, but you can obviously see when he says, you know, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish the institute and institute a new government. Basically, if this old government doesn't work or isn't working for the people, and he believed that. And historians look at it kind of crazy and stuff like that. But the thing about it is, for me, this whole thing and his whole view of it is because it's something he hopes for. This Declaration of Independence is a hope for the future country. Back when they were looking into the abyss, when it was nothing.
Well, that's why he's also saying the Declaration of Independence is really putting the power into the hands of the people.
Yes.
Not a few leaders. The power really belongs to the people, and this is why people need to know that we as a people, we have the power to change things.
Yeah, and on top of that, as it states in the Declaration of Independence, which is supposed to be the meaning, what we stand for, and why we started this country, it states, as I said, that the government gets its power from said people it governs.
Which is us.
Which is us. We hold the power, and they should be working for us. We can see it a lot in very different times, where it's clear indications that in different points you can multitude of different things that can split the country. It might split politicians and their own constituents, have separate ideas. The thing about it is, as your politician to a constituent, you're supposed to be representing the ideas, not your own necessarily, but their ideas in total. They put you there because they hoped that you would support their ideas. Sometimes it might differ. And don't get me wrong, in some situations you might have a better understanding than your constituents to find out what they really want. But in modern era, most constituents are well-educated, not dumb people. The American public isn't dumb.
Well, I know sometimes when history or politics are not people's favorite things, but this is why, one of the reasons why we wanted to do this is to start to educate more people and let them know that they have that power. It is in our hands as a people. And this is another thing why I find that that saying that goes, you know, you need to know your history, where we came from, and And like my Javen said, the Declaration of Independence, how many of us really know it? But I think it's very important, especially what's happening in our country today, where our current government is trying to strip of our rights, that we read and learn just about how much power we have, and read up on the Declaration of Independence, and the Bill of Rights, which will be another topic that we will be going into. But one of the things that I wanted to make this correlation, because between God and country and politics, God is in everything.
Yeah.
Just like this country was built on freedom to choose, freedom. It's the point of choice. God gave us a free will of choice. He wanted us to live in a country, in a place where we had that freedom to choose, whether it's right or wrong. But God gives us that right.
Mm-hmm. And it says it in the multitude. This whole they tried to make us country a separation of church and state, but they are Christians, and as everybody knows, what you believe affects every point of your life. So it affects so much, and it's in so much of our national anthem, to every part of documents, that when it states at the end, protection of divine providence and things like that, and saying it's our God-given right, and it's our basic human rights, they all put on the mindset that those rights were given by God himself to us, and no one should be able to take that away from you.
Mm-hmm. And for some of you, some may argue, and I want to get this point across, some may argue that God already knows what we will do, and our paths have already been determined. For those people who think that we don't have a free will when it comes to God, and God already knows what's going to happen, so it's not it's not that we have a choice, that He already really physically directs our paths, and that we don't have a choice. I do not believe this theory at all, and I know that we really do have a free will when it comes to God, and God does not totally orchestrates our lives, because He gives us that choice. So I don't agree with this theory, because I know God has given us a choice to choose which way we really want to go. See, which way we really want to go, whether it's to the left or to the right, that is our choice. Whether it's wrong or not, that is our choice. I believe God has already calculated the infinite variable possible outcomes to every choice, that in every situation that we will do. He calculates and knows them. So whichever choice that we choose, He calculates and sees the infinite possibilities of what the outcome is going to be. He is able to do that. That reminds me of like what happened in the Marvel movie, in Infinity Wars and Endgame, where Doctor Strange calculated the trillions of outcomes of their odds of winning against Thanos. And it was only one way to win out of all those possibilities. And in the end, it still came down to choice. Iron Man had to make that choice. And I believe that that is how it is with us, with God. God may know all the variable outcomes, but it still is up to us which one we are going to choose. And God doesn't know which way we're going to choose. even though He knows our heart, and I believe He can predict the possible choice that we are going to choose because of His infinite wisdom. And I think God leaves that part up to us, the choice. He does not choose for us, because I think God likes a little bit of a mystery. Otherwise, He would not have given us a choice. So, if God will leave the ultimate choice up to us, then who are we to take away the choice of other people? I hope you enjoyed this video. Javen and myself, we enjoyed doing this video with you. We hope you have a blessed day. We love you, God.
Goodbye.
Take care.